50% of Americans who are not retired say they will have enough money to live comfortably when they are retired. That's not very good. That means about half of non-retired Americans think they won't have enough money to live comfortably. They're worried about retirement, although that number has been as low as 38% in recent years, but it was also as high as about 6 out of 10, 59% about a decade ago. So on average, Americans still very worried that they won't have enough money to live comfortably when they retire. Now, what sources of money are Americans going to depend on when they do retire? Well, we got an interesting way of looking at that because we did ask Americans that. We read a list of sources, those who aren't retired, and say, how much will you depend on each of these? But we can contrast that with how retirees responded to the same list and see where the disparities are between those who are currently retired, where they're getting their money, and where non-retirees think they're going to get their money. Let's look at the list there. The biggest disparity is, perhaps not surprisingly, Social Security. Only 31% of non-retired Americans think that's going to be a major source of income when they retire, but 55% of current retirees say that's a major source. And in fact, that's the highest source of income in terms of being classified as a major source of anything we tested among retirees. That's a 24 percentage point gap there. Again, retirees are depending heavily on Social Security. Those who aren't retired say it's not going to be, or at least much less likely to say it's going to be a major source of income. Another discrepancy comes with pension plans. Perhaps this is realistic. Those who are retired, significantly more likely to say that they depend on the income from a work-sponsored pension plan than is the case for those who are not retired, who are not nearly as likely to think that's going to be a source of income when they retired. And there's a very small difference in annuity or insurance plans. Those who are retired are a little more likely to say they depend on those than is the projected retirement source of income for those among those who are retired. Now, what's the flip side? What do Americans who are not retired now think they're going to depend on? Well, the biggest difference here is on a 401k plan, IRA, KEO, other retirement savings account. Look at those numbers, a 26 percentage point gap. In other words, non-retired Americans say, yes, I'm going to live off my 401k. Currently retired Americans are much less likely to actually be living off a 401k. Now, part of that's realistic. For really old Americans, of course, there weren't 401k plans when they were working, so maybe this is a realistic assessment. But the problem is, studies show that a lot of these younger Americans don't have much money at all saved away in these retirement accounts, and that's not going to be of much use to them when they do retire. Other discrepancies, not nearly as big, but one that I would point out to you here is part-time work. Americans who are not retired are significantly more likely to say they will depend on part-time work than is the case among those who are retired. We'll see what happens. Of course, some of these people responding to our survey are just in their early 20s now, and that's a long way before they are going to be retired. Who knows what their sources of income will be? But right now, we have some significant differences in the reality of what retirees are using and what those who aren't retired say they're going to use. I'm Dr. Frank Newport, Gallup Editor-in-Chief.